This is illegal what they're doing, but because of the fact that they thought that they could get away with harassing an innocent person, to them it wasn't an innocent person that they were harassing. Like, to them it was a person that they believed was a dangerous criminal, which ironically was them that was a dangerous criminal, because they actually are word for word what criminals are in like textbooks and stuff. A lot of people are involved in this, and they intentionally hire people who are unfit for work, and I thought that it was because there was no one else to work the job, and that's partly true, but the main reason was because they didn't want anyone to do well in this country. And I'm like, why are if you're gonna do that, then the country's gonna fail, like you're gonna run out of money and people are gonna leave. Like, why would you do that? Like, that didn't really make that much sense to me. But like, a bunch of people were harassing me, and some officers were literally stalking and harassing me. They even stole some stuff from me, to which they now refuse to return because they're scared that I'm gonna kill them with it. Because they were planning on killing me, so they're like, yeah, now you know that, I'm scared that you're gonna kill me for it. And I'm like, I don't care about you, and they don't believe that they're getting sent to prison, and they don't believe that they're getting repoed, and they don't believe that they're getting deported, sorry, which has already happened to a few officers already. And I don't know why they're intentionally doing this, because they refuse to actually, like, they think that I want to fight them all the time and they're worth my time. That's the first thing, and they're offended when I say that's not true, and then it takes them a while to realize why that's the truth. And initially they just, because they believe that they're very worthwhile, valuable people regardless of whatever job that they work in, which is true for some people, just not them. Like, they're not that type of person. Like, they have absolutely no self-awareness whatsoever. Like, they don't understand what they're doing or what they are or who they are. Like, that stuff doesn't, like, it doesn't kind of click in their brain. But the thing is, they repeatedly threatened me and threatened my health and safety, and now I'm literally starving because they refuse to give me any food, and other people are involved, including shelter users, some random people who work outside of the country. Some people are actually running immigration scams. They were trying to get me to be involved with it because they thought that I would marry them or be in a common law relationship with them, and that would force me to be a sponsor for them to get their citizenship card here. And I don't know why they keep doing this, but all I really know is, like, they keep trying to tell me that, like, they're gonna rob me and all that kind of stuff, and I've never once seen somebody do that. Like, this is why it's really embarrassing. Like, I don't know why they keep saying this. I told them repeatedly to leave me alone, that I didn't do anything, and they knew this, but it didn't stop them from stopping themselves or saying those things or saying those rumors, which is why I don't believe them or trust them. And due to the amount of people that are involved, I don't currently think it's a good idea for me to like, do anything. As in, like, I don't think it's worth my time, and I don't think it's gonna end well for myself or anyone involved, because they don't believe that they're going to prison. Like, this is why they're doing this. They took prison out of the equation, and criminal charges and deportation and citizenship revocation out of the equation altogether, and said that if they do this, then I'm going to be the criminal. Like, you can turn somebody into a criminal, like you can turn somebody homosexual, like you can turn people into whatever you want them to be. Because if you force them enough and you, like, oppress them enough, they just turn into that type of person. And now that plan has backfired. Their plan now is to get me to work in the government or, like, any government sector. So they're like, if you stay here long enough, like, one day a position will open up for you and you can work there. And I'm like, why would I do that if this is all you've done so far? Like, that's my current issue, is that I understand that it might have worked for some people if that didn't happen to them, and it didn't happen to them. So why would you expect me to agree or be like that person if I didn't go through the same things they did? They didn't go through the same legal problems. That's my point, right? Because this is currently a legal battle, but I don't think they understand that legal battles are just within the confines of a court, a judge, and lawyers, and whatever other stuff, evidence related to evidence stuff. Like, other than that, it's like, it's not an actual, it's not my problem. How I'd say this, like, I don't, like, they don't really seem to understand this, and I realize a lot of them are like refugees and are like people without any legal status here. But like, again, I don't understand why they're trying to make everybody else in that situation look bad, because then they're actively saying this is what they're saying, and this is literally what they're promoting. Like, they're going outside and protesting, saying that every refugee and every person on visa is just like them, and I'm like, that's not true. And also, you're gonna give off the wrong impression, and just because things didn't work out for you doesn't mean it's not gonna work out for anyone else. Like, that doesn't make any sense at all. And currently, the cops confiscated my dog, and now they're holding him prisoner in one of the animal shelters here, and I don't know why they're doing that. One of them has schizophrenia, and he's the one who's been like harassing me. He actively believed and thought that we were dating and that I was his girlfriend. Like, that's what he believed, and I was like, why would I think that? Like, and also they believe that I'm a kid and they can influence me and just teach me how to do things because I'm a 7-year-old child and I have no knowledge of the working world. And I'm like, yeah, maybe, like, it wouldn't even work on them, but they believe that it might work on them. Like, I don't know why that's, whatever, I'm gonna ignore it. Um, but yeah, they think that I'm a 7-year-old child and I have no working knowledge of anything, and that if they degrade me and humiliate me enough, one day I will change my mind and I would love this country, even if they abuse me, steal from me, lie to me, and completely deny me any access to resources that I've already paid for. And the police thought that their justification in court is going to be like, oh, she doesn't make enough money to pay enough taxes here. So that means that we don't have to do as all of the jobs because we don't even get that much money from her, or the salary is coming from other people. And I'm like, yeah, but they're paying you so this doesn't happen, because that kind of incident leads to all these other problems that affect that person at work. So you're not just hurting one person, you're hurting everyone. And you're only doing this because you personally don't feel like you're respected or that people like you, and the reason why they don't respect you or like you is because you're doing stuff like that. Like, it's something that they don't personally understand, and I don't know why they don't understand that it's illegal, and it's never worked. They keep threatening me, they keep getting fired, they keep doing all this stuff, and the result is I get all my stuff back and they get into prison, and the country is getting worse for wear. So it's like, okay, I don't know why all these people are getting involved. I've realized some people who are refugees or immigrants or like visa status holders here, they're psychotic, and they just didn't like the fact that people are doing well in America. And these are a majority of them are British. These are British people coming here and trying to ruin the country, by the way, because they're not relying or depending on the British government or British people to do well. So they're like, you can't do that, like, you need us, you need to have us in your life, or whatever, and I'm like, it's kind of crazy. But yeah, that's what they've been doing. I don't know what to do in this situation, and I also have realized a lot of people who have come across me and see what's going on and understand what's going on, they're like, I wouldn't know, like, like the case with the, if I worked as a teacher or a counselor and I just found out like a bunch of kids were smoking crack and got raped by like parents or something, I wouldn't know what to tell them, right? So I, like, honestly, I'm, everything I would say would be generic. Everything I would be doing is like making sure that they're actually like able to focus on school and helping them with their grades, and making sure that they're like not gonna have emotional breakdowns, and hopefully like not involving too many like people for that thing. But other than that, like honestly, I don't know what else I would be doing in that situation. Like those people who don't even work in that field, never had that experience, but they hear about it on the news, or they hear about it like on the newspaper, or they read about it on the newspaper, or they see some sort of like social media outlets, they hear people talk about this kind of issue all the time, and they don't personally know what to do about it either, right? Like, it's just, it's different from you understanding that kind of concept and what's going on, and versus actually being in the actual thing. And I totally get where they're coming from, because if I was in their situation, look, if I was a person and my job was to, I was a receptionist at a office job, and I actually didn't have any problems with my family, and it wasn't hard for me to make friends, and I was born in that country, and I actually personally never experienced anything like this. And in the case I ever hear about it, it's always like somebody else in a different town, or it's not as bad from my point of view, because I don't actually see exactly what they're going through, right? I just hear about what's going on, that kind of stuff. So that's why um, I wouldn't know what to say to somebody who said like, yeah, I just got to this country, and the minute I went to my employer, they fired me illegally. I'm still on a work visa within 3 months, and I can't even access my bank accounts anymore, because for some reason half of my funds have been drained by the bank, whatever I was using. I'm still applying for reimbursement for that kind of stuff, and I can't even call the police because I'm not actually like I'm not a citizen yet, so the taxes that they pay for people to look after citizens isn't actually covered by my visa. And also, I don't know anybody in the area well enough for them to actually help me track them down, because they just met me, they don't know me very well, and they don't know if I was actually actively involved or not. So if I met somebody in that situation, I wouldn't know what to tell them other than like, oh, did you try finding a lawyer? Did you try like going to these places? Like, did you go to your the consult office? Did you go to your immigration officer? And did you go to like the local police force to at least, at the end of the day, report an incident that occurred that could have involved a citizen? Right? Like that would be the only thing I would say, which is basically what everyone has been saying to me, apart from the insults. But somebody actually told me like, don't take it too personally, even though it is personal. It's because they're poor. They come from very poor households, and they have very poor education, and they don't know anybody else who isn't like that, because they're like that. They only hang out with people who are like that, because they're the only people who would put up with that kind of stuff. Everyone else either stays away from them, or it just sees them very incrementally for a very short period of time, until they never really hear about that or from that person again, right? And I'm like, wow. And that's basically, not basically, word for word, that's what they're telling me. But just like for my situation, they're like, you need to be able to access these services. Did you do that? Did you do that? Okay, well, I don't really know what else to tell you. And at first I thought it was offensive, because some of them were implying that I had something to do with it, or like it was my fault because I was leading them on, or I was actively behaving in a way that might be offensive. But I wasn't, because a lot of the times it's true that the person did or say something that might have triggered somebody or set somebody off, right? It might be intentionally or unintentionally, but I actually didn't do that. And that's why they're like even more like at a loss to what to say, because they're like, not that these things don't happen, but they're like, they never actually personally experienced that before, and that shouldn't really be happening, so nobody really talks about it. And plus, nobody really likes to hear about that kind of stuff either. And I've done all I can, like as a citizen here, to report all the crimes, all that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of people are trying to tell me like, don't get too surprised, because these kind of crimes happen everywhere, and usually it's restricted to very, very low income poor areas, which are everybody who is involved is from a very poor income household or background. And some of them said some of them actually got like kind of roped into it or dragged into it without actually knowing about it, only because they didn't know what was actually going on. Like, as in, they didn't realize that what they were helping people with. Like, if a friend came up to me and asked me, hey, can you like help me like move some stuff to my new place for a bit? And I'm like, sure. And I help that person move to a new place, and I see some person like trying to bother my friend, I'd be like, oh, fuck off, what are you doing? Right? Like, that would be my first instinctual reaction, which is what a lot of people take advantage of, right? And then or like if a coworker's like, yeah, there's a client who's been like bothering me, and like I don't know what to do, and then they show me what they did at work, and everything's fine, and this person's still showing up and like saying all this weird stuff, and my first assumption would be like, oh, I guess we got like, I have weird customers before too, and I'm like, yeah, probably like some weirdo or whatever. And then like I'd probably just like tell them like, did you report to the police if you're like feeling threatened or anything? Like, you can if you want. And then like I'd probably tell them the same thing. And then like it turns out my coworker was actually involved with that person's personal life, and then had something to do with why that person was here, which is what they're saying. They're like, most of the times that's what that is. Like they wouldn't just go there and harass somebody for no reason. That's very rare. And I'm like, I just, but then this was back in the day, right? Back when they didn't really know about the catfishing and then the phishing scams and like the online stuff. Not a lot of people, like, honestly, everybody who works in like very professional, high position fields, they don't actually upload all of the. Nobody actually talks about their work online, and nobody actually like uploads all of their personal data and all that kind of information online, right? Like they actually still use paper, and they have like filing cabinets where they have like written records and reports of it in their filing cabinet. They don't scan that, put it in the computer, and put it for future reference. Like that kind of stuff is like pretty recent. Some the doctors here do that here, but that's only because it's a government run program, right? Like if I was living in a country with privatized healthcare, they wouldn't be doing that because they would need to actually access the files directly. So they would have to sign some forms prior to getting a release for the files that they need from the patient. And also they would need the patient's consent. And also they would need a diagnosis from the patient by the practicing doctor at that time for them to be able to access those files. So no, if that all of that is cleared, then they'll be accessing their files from past, and they won't even ask for it because it's a pain in the ass to go through until like there's some sort of there's something wrong with the patient's treatment. Like it's not effective or it's not going through very well, and they need to know why it's not, this patient's not being responsive to the treatment, right? Like if this person has some sort of failing, I don't know, like low blood pressure or something, and they're not responding to medication, they need to know like has this person has like experience with prior medications before. This person has some sort of other underlying condition that was treated. It might have popped up again in the recent times, and they don't know what to look for, right? So they're like gonna test that person for whatever it is, so they don't actually end up like misdiagnosing the patient, or at least knowing how to go about the treatment. So that's kind of what it that is. And initially I thought that like people were all in on it, and like they were all like, because they were saying the same thing in the same way, but from their professional and personal experience, it's because that person had something to do with it. And especially if you're at work as your coworker, you're trying to support your coworker, some people do that even though they don't actually side with them. Or if it's my friend, if I know what my friend is like thoroughly like, and nobody really knows that person as well as you think you do, then I would kind of take it with a grain of salt. I'd be like, oh, you know what, that guy's probably just upset, or like, oh, you know what, there's some crazy people everywhere. Like, just don't worry about it too much. Like, that's what I would be saying if but like, I wouldn't like the fact that like if my friend asked me to move some stuff to their new house, and turns out it was stolen and it was transported using my vehicle that they have evidence of, then I would be an accessory to crime whether or not I knew it or not, which is the sucky part, which is what a lot of people I think are realizing. Like, I get that you trusted this person. This is the whole point of scam and cons working, which isn't working with me, which is why a lot of people are upset with me. This is why they're stalking me, harassing me. Because they didn't know, they thought I was being rude to them initially, but I knew that they were gonna do that sooner or later down the road, which is what they actually start to realize. Afterwards, they're like, oh, you knew I was that type of person, and you knew I was gonna do that if that ever happened. And I'm like, yeah, that's why I didn't want to be in that situation. I like, if I said no to you even though I'm supposed to say yes, and like I got involved in that kind of stuff, it's gonna be a pain in the ass for everybody, right? And a lot of people are trying to tell me like, you need to be able to like forgive them even if they did something wrong, and still be able to trust them to do their work. And I'm like, I would, but like it seems like there's been a consistent problem in everything that I'm coming across, and I don't know why that is. And they're like, this is like why it's a problem with the whole like scam stuff. This is kind of like a legal thing that people are going through, and I'm like, I didn't know. Like, my fault is that I didn't report it sooner. That's it. Like, I didn't really know that I had to report the stuff. I did report some of the incidents, but I didn't actually report or call in and say that this is what is happening to me and this is what I'm reporting. Like, this is the crimes that are happening to me, because initially I actually didn't know that was what that was. I thought it would end at that one incident there, and usually it does, which is why the cops aren't giving me like, some of them are giving me shit about it, but some of them are like, you wouldn't have known because they're trained in that field, and lawyers are trained, and people with criminology degrees, they know that kind of stuff, but I wouldn't have known it. Because I would be like, okay, this is just like a robbery and like a sexual assault, and some people, it's most of the time it just ends there. but it kept like other people kept on going coming into my life and interfering and getting involved in all these weird people and I never met before were saying all these things to me and I was like, this is kind of weird. Like it's something's kind of odd now. And then that's when I was like, oh, it's because of that. Like that wasn't their goal. That's just kind of what they were doing to reach that goal. The goal being, I guess, immigration scams or something. I don't know. But yeah, that's what they were saying. They're like, I know it seems personal, and for some people they are saying to you personally, but honestly, it's because from their experience, they actually have seen people like you in that similar situation. Even though there's a difference in like details, that they had actually something to do with why things happened that way. Like I don't know, like I blew my friend off a couple times too much and now my friend's pissed at me and stuff happened and it's starting to affect me or something like that, or like um I'm not being sensitive to what they're going through, which means I was being a bad friend to them and they're going through too much stuff and they're too busy to help me out or talk to me or whatever, like that kind of stuff. But I was like, that's not really what's going on. Like I keep reporting it and a lot of people said that typically when people are in your situation, that's what that means. And if that's not what that means, it means there's a serious problem worse than anything that they could do about. Not that it doesn't happen. Like I didn't know it was that bad. They're like, yeah, it's just typical. This is why it's like hard for immigrants to move and like settle down and I guess like make the roots in a different country, because this is kind of like a lot of problems that they encounter. And I thought it was just from other citizens. Some citizens are like that, but I've noticed all of them had a either history of criminal behavior and some of them were convicted, or they were very very poor, like they didn't make any money at all whatsoever. So those were the poor citizens who were bothering me, that the cops already knew about in the area, that they knew that were living there. And I thought that like the amount of income didn't really matter as long as you did your best and still like apply for it. And they're like, that's true, but it's because you're an immigrant and you haven't been living here for a long time. Some people here like fifth generation, sixth generation Canadians, and they've been living here for a while. So some people like their income bracket, they've stayed in the income bracket for a long time, or some people live in a very poor income bracket for a very long time. So it's kind of like that. And they were making assumptions because people in my income bracket are typically exhibit these types of behaviors and these type of thought patterns, which is what they were assuming about me because they didn't have anything else to go by. But they're being lazy. But apparently a lot of people were also trying to tell me that a lot of things don't really happen here. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, you can see the roads are being cracked. Like, there's cracks all over the roads and so many potholes that weren't filled. And there's construction going on all throughout the year for the past, like, 10 years. Like, I feel like that's already a sign that, like, things aren't working properly. Like, I'm not really surprised this is happening, kind of. But at the same time, to this extent, I'm kind of a little bit shocked. But oh, somebody also had to tell me like some people are actively showing up to work high. And I'm like, why? Like drunk and high and stuff? They're like, no, if they show up drunk, other people will know because it smells a reek of alcohol. And a healthcare worker, I think she was a nurse, she told me that long-term drug users, as in legitimate addicts, like people who qualify for who are legitimate addicts or drug addicts, because their body is so used to like consuming that drug, that it doesn't actually show up on their drug test or their urine test. And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, when people are like so accustomed to consuming a certain amount of drugs, it stops showing up as um a large sign. Like there's no like sign to say that there is a warning. Like the body is so used to having the drug in the system now, it becomes part of their regular levels. The only way they know is because they can see what an addict is and they know what addicts are, but otherwise the test won't actually show for it unless they run through an every extensive series of tests and cross out results with every other result, and then they have a final result for it. But most of the time it's very time consuming and it's expensive to run those tests, and they don't really do that. And plus when they do that, they don't respond very well because they're mentally ill, because they're drug addicts. And I'm like, that's so weird. And they're like, yeah. And they're like, that's what they were expecting for people like me. And they're like, some people who are serious drug addicts, they don't look like drug addicts. Like they look normal because you do a lot of work to maintain that appearance. solely so that they can continue consuming those drugs without alerting other people. And I'm like, oh my god. Anyway, yeah, that's what they've been telling me. They're like, everything that they're saying is like, I'm like, I feel like this is what refugees would go through. And they're like, kind of, but not really. This is like the first time in a long time that an immigrant actually came here and was capable of doing those types of jobs. And since not a lot of people know you, they don't know what you're actually like. They just know from your demographics and the people that you knew back in the past in history. And those make sense due to your income level and where you were living and the people that you were around. If you didn't even have any friends, that would be even worse. Then they kind of assume things about you that way. Like they have a lot of some of them actually had experience where they hired somebody who was seemingly normal and then they did that, and it just cost them a lot of money and a lot of reputation and they lost a lot of customers and business. Some people even had to downsize or rebrand because it just affected them that badly. And I was like, that's weird. And they're like, it is weird and it's bad because people now assume that everybody in that situation is just like that. Like they don't think that people are there to like actually go there and work and like make a new life for themselves, because it's hard for a lot of people to leave everything behind, all their friends behind, and even cut out family members who are like that, who are gonna hurt other people and that person, because a lot of people still put up with it. So I'm like, and then they're like, yeah, they thought that that's what you were doing and that's what you're going to continue to do. That's what their assumption was. They didn't want those people showing up to your work. They didn't want to have to deal with that. So that's why they did all that, because they thought you were involved somehow, or they did just didn't want to go through it, which might have been legitimate if it wasn't for the fact that you wouldn't have ever done it. And I'm like, I know, but they're like, yeah, they make a lot of assumptions about people, especially when you're in that environment. And I'm like, and I didn't know why they were saying those things until now, when I was like somebody told me that it's because, honestly, typically it's because of the fact that some people assumed I was here for a very long time, like I was born here, and some people assumed that I was a fresh immigrant because they weren't like the citizens who were born here that they met. So they're like, oh, you probably just came to this country. And I'm like, no, I was here for a while, but like I was an immigrant. So they're like, this is, I thought like people write books about immigration all the time, and I didn't know. I don't know who that guy is. He's scared of me though. Oh, he's on steroids. Is that roid rage? That might be roid rage. Oh my god. I was theorizing about what roid rage was, which is like when people take steroids, their emotional responses are abnormal and they get really, really angry and upset. But because of the hormones which regulate your emotions, your responses are going to be abnormal because of it. Which is why steroids are illegal. But yeah, that guy's on steroids. Okay, it's illegal, but I guess you can't, like, I don't know. I don't want to even know any about that kind of stuff. But yeah, that guy is on steroids. Okay, so that's what they were saying. They're like, typically, like, a lot of people in your situation, we have no way to tell because there's a lot of people who are like that, like you, who you can't tell until you put them in the situation, you ask them or do something, and then you see their responses, and then you can see it. But I'm like, isn't that too invasive at that point? And they're like, it is illegal, which is why a lot of people are in shit. But it's rare that like people in your situation, so like most immigrants, they don't actually work or qualified to work those jobs. Most of them, they're qualified to run small businesses or maybe buy out a franchise. Some people are qualified to work like very minimum entry level positions or supervisor or manager roles, managerial roles. That's it. Like that's basically most people who are immigrants. Not a lot of people who are immigrants are qualified to work that kind of stuff. Maybe later on in the road when they like lay the roots down here and have a bunch of kids, like maybe their kids or their grandkids can do those things, but they themselves typically aren't qualified to work those jobs. And a lot of it has to do with like language limitations, so like they're not actually fluent in that language, whereas everyone else is, which causes a lot of problems because there's like people don't understand what they're trying to say. So I think, which is kind of what I'm seeing too. Like English isn't my first language, so everything that I need to understand that's like something that's like not so like superficial surface level or something that's not like too in depth, I have to translate it into Korean for me to be able to understand it. So because of that, like it's kind of like a language barrier. But like I think people's first language, like you can't get rid of it. So like everything that you understand and the idioms, responses, all that kind of stuff, the thing that people go by in their first language is what they know, especially since I was just born there and I came here. Even if a person's first language was like if they were born in Canada and their first language is Korean, but they use English at school, but they were never born in Korea. It's still not the same thing as if they were born in Korea, went to school there, and then learned English later on. Those are two different things. But yeah, I was wondering why it was like this. Like I didn't really expect it to be like this because like some people like just kind of, I guess they're like you don't really see it, and it's kind of odd that you keep encountering people who aren't really doing well at work, which was obvious to everyone at work and people that they knew, but not to you because you just met that person. But again, if you were living here for a while and you knew the area and you had a job and you had a place to live, you would have known it somehow. Like you've heard about it, or like you would have like, yeah, you would have heard about it. Your friends would have heard about it. Like you would have known it somehow. But since you don't actually have that many friends here, and the friends that you did have is somebody you can't really talk to anymore, and plus you don't have a stable housing and you're not actually currently employed, you wouldn't really know, even though other people would have known. But the fact that they work there and it's because it's so easily available and because you're low income, that's what's there. Which isn't that odd, except that you keep coming across these people and it's not always like obvious. So I was like, yeah, I'm not intentionally seeking it out. Some people who are thrill seekers or adrenaline junkies intentionally seek out those type of situations in order to kind of supplement their adrenaline addiction. So like it's kind of like extreme sports people, you know, when they like to go hang gliding or bungee diving or like cliff diving or something like that, like adrenaline junkies, they kind of seek out very high risk social and physical stimulating environments so that they can get that rush of adrenaline, you know, like that fear or like whatever. But I don't like that. I mean, I keep encountering a lot of people who are like that, and I think they're also adrenaline junkies who are looking for a quick fix. Like they want that thrill, like the adrenaline boost before they go do something. Right? So they're looking to pick fights with somebody. They want somebody to yell at them or whatever, and then they go home and like just, you know, because of the natural adrenaline rush, like they can do something after or whatever. Most people just stick to drinking coffee. Honestly, like it's just so much easier than going out and trying to pick a fight with a stranger and then hopefully trying to avoid a legal battle or something, and preventing yourself from getting your feelings hurt and having people reject you, which is actually painful, which a lot of people don't seem to understand. But yeah, I didn't really know why the cops were saying this and like stalking me, and they thought that I was like some weirdo and I was like only gonna pretend to live here and get other people involved and like try to scam everyone out of the money because I was an immigrant, and this has happened with immigrants before. No, I don't know if it happened in Canada. I'm assuming it didn't, which is why it happened, because people didn't know about it. I know it happened in the USA because I heard about the dot-com bubble burst, and that's what they were referring to, but I didn't think they would happen again here because a lot of Canadians here heard about that happening, but I think the people that did hear about that happening weren't involved in those things, or they didn't even go near those person because they knew what that was. So they're like, oh, that person's not even gonna help bother helping me or anything. So I'm gonna go to people who don't know about this kind of stuff or don't really read the news that often. But yeah, also, somebody, I think one of the celebrities who was on the interview on TV said that he believes the news is misleading, and a lot of people agree with this. Like they echo his sentiment, but I don't think the news is misleading at all. They are actively only reporting what it's being reported from the interview. So if the interview or the people in the area who are willing to talk to them about what happened. So if there's an incident that occurred and it's somebody reported it and other neighbors heard about it, the interviewer or the news anchor would go there and interview that person, right? They're trying to figure out what's happened and then write a story, as in like an article outlining what they heard and what they saw and what people have told them. That can get misleading if you don't actually know what that person's saying because you don't know that person or you don't know what the journalist is trying to convey, right? This is kind of a higher level reading comprehension, but that's still at an 8th grade reading comprehension, as in by 8th grade, people are like, yeah, we like to joke around and say this stuff, or like, I know my friend's lying about this is because like it's embarrassing for her to say, or like, yeah, she doesn't really know what's going on, but she wants to kind of seem like it's going on. But like, if you talk to everyone, you can kind of get an idea of like, oh, like, so like this happened, but like I think these people are involved, but I don't really know, but other people are lying about it because they are either scared or embarrassed about what's going on, because either they had a feeling that this would happen and they didn't do anything about it, or like they actively did something to make sure that that would happen without knowing that that's what they were doing, even though they knew it wasn't okay. Or like something like, um uh that person's lying, but I know that only because of what everyone else is saying. I don't know that person very well, but this is what everyone else is saying, this is what that person's saying, so when I know that person's lying, that's very basic 8th grade reading comprehension levels. It's not very thorough or in depth, but that's what they're reporting. So they're reporting what other people have told them, what they can see, and what they're allowed to see. So they can't actually hack into the security cameras, and they can't actually hack into the police department's um, computer systems, right? And they can't actually like go and like stalk the police officers at the scene of the crime and just try to get a visual on it, right? Like those things would be illegal and they would be sent to prison for that. And it's actually a violation of a lot of people's privacy, which would make a lot of people unhappy and angry. So that's another thing that is like why people think the news is misleading, and people don't like they stay away from reading the news so much, because this is what I actually learned in psychology, which is people who are constantly bombarded and always look at news typically are unhappier and less likely to go outside and meet new people, because they hear all these bad things happening. So they don't want to get involved in that, and they feel like as long as they're okay, because it just seems like an emergency situation all the time, as long as they just keep to themselves and just do their job or whatever they think is good for their job or their career, everything will be fine, and everyone else can like be able to prevent it or do something without actively being involved. And that's kind of impossible, but yeah, that's it. I think it took me a while to do read that kind of stuff, because I there were so many people who were involved that were lying about it, and there were so many people who were lying about not being involved, and the fact that it happened all in succession made it seem a little fishy. But I think it was genuinely that's what they were going for, to make it look like that, to make it look like, if you're in that situation, you encounter these people, you're gonna start to mistrust the people who are actually there doing their jobs, or like you're gonna start mistrusting people who aren't, like, you shouldn't be mistrusting because of like your past experiences whatsoever, whatever, that kind of stuff. But yeah, um, it's still annoying. They said that people were suspicious because I was an immigrant. I was very fluent in English, and I came from a very poor family, which literally they've never even heard of. So they thought that it was either a scam, so like I was involved in being legally listed as their adopted member of the family, so that I could run scams for them or something, or like I was only doing that to make it look like I'm doing a good thing, or look like I'm like making sure that like I'm accepted by people who I can work with, so that I can run these scams later. Basically, they're being extremely paranoid, and I don't know if it's because they've experienced or heard about that kind of stuff happening before. But that's the reason why it's illegal. Even if those things did happen, it's better to let that happen than to do this, which would be completely wrong and presumptuous and with no evidence. Like my only like I can't go by what I see, even if I see that person is like a certain type of person. If that person hasn't done anything to me, because of the fact that that would be illegal, and that would just set that person off. So let's say like that person is a thief, but that person hasn't stolen anything from me personally, right? But then if I accuse that person and treat that person as if they were a thief, even though number one, they weren't planning on stealing from me, and number two, they've never stolen something from me, in a personal interaction, they're gonna get very, very offended, and then they're gonna start like defending themselves and getting offensive back to me, because I'm actually insulting that person by saying that that person doesn't know how to control themselves and can't even understand basic human interactions, right? Even though that's not what I was thinking and that's not what I meant by it, which is why it's illegal for them to do that. It's why people are like, please don't do those things. If anybody did that, to me, even though they didn't know me, regardless of even if they were right about me, regardless of whatever demographics I fit in and what I would be likely to be doing based on my experience. Because I haven't done anything to them, it would just make me angry and offended, insulting, and that's illegal. You can't just offend and insult people for no reason. That's called harassment. So yeah, I guess a lot of people didn't trust the fact that well, it's possible for this kind of stuff to happen because of what they've experienced. And I've seen it. Like, I've seen visa people, I've seen refugees, I've seen what they're like. And I wouldn't be too fond of letting them into my life either. Right? Like, I would suspect that they were doing something wrong, which is what a lot of them do end up doing anyway. So I guess it's hard for people to kind of there's a kid in front of me and there's a supervisor behind me and I'm not really sure why they're here. But yeah, yeah, it just looks weird. Yeah, I don't know. I know it might be coincidental, but like it seems like it's a little weird. But yeah, that's what a lot of people were also doing. Like, they knew that the person's over there, and then they would like come in here and they would just make everything look kind of weird and fishy and sketchy, even though they weren't even involved with each other. And some people even act as if they were involved and they know that person. And then it just, if they can guess the person's reading level or like how that person thinks or what they like, then they try to like convince that person like they know what's going on, they know that guy or whatever. Which is kind of funny. But anyway, yeah, apparently kids say that they do that all the time at school, and like they try to do that with other adults and they just get called out on it and their adults tell them to stop it. But I guess that's just how they learn to socialize. Or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, that's what they were thinking about me. They're like, oh my god, are you here to like steal and like hurt innocent civilians so that like you can get more money and leave and get convicted in your country, but like you still have enough money to buy a house so you don't have to worry about if you get out of jail. And I'm like, I assumed actually that they were gonna do that because I wasn't even thinking about that. But then they said that that was what I was doing, and then I thought they were doing projection, and I was like, is that what you're gonna do? Is that what you're telling me? And then I guess I kind of freaked out, and I was like, I don't know why they were even freaking out, because it's not even like I was saying anything or doing anything, but it was because I was homeless. They're like, why are you homeless? And I'm like, because some weird stuff was happening, and they didn't believe me until like a few days ago, when they literally saw who was involved and how they were behaving, and they're like, and they're like, I'm like, I was wondering if this happened before, and they said the old residents of the city said, yeah, it has happened before, but with a different city, and they try to run immigration scams and all that kind of stuff in a different city before, from a different city in Toronto. And I'm like, so it's the same thing is happening again, but it's in a different city, but like involving different people, and it still didn't work out. They're like, it never works out. They just keep trying to do this, and they think it's gonna work out. And I'm like, why did they even let him in the country? And because they're like, you can't actually deny that person's immigration because you have to assess them on a case individually by case basis. And even if their family members are criminals, if they're not criminals, like, and they're just coming into the country by themselves, you can't actually do or say anything. Like, they can't just be like, we can't admit you because your friend is living in Hungary and he's a convicted felon. That's why. And they're like, you can't say that because that's illegal. It's against your immigration job and you'll get fired and stuff. But like, basically, you have to let them in the country and grant them the citizenship and whatever if everything they're doing is fine. And if they're okay, then you can't say anything. And I'm like, oh, yeah. Oh, also, I put a little compost pile near the station because I don't know if I will need like the compost later. And I saw that actually there's no worms around the station, and that was a problem because they keep putting fake grass everywhere. And it's because like the grass that you can buy at like Home Depot or something, or like Rona's or like Home Hardware, it's like these fake, like It's like about 3 inches of dirt, and then there's like some grass roots in it, and then like they just roll it up, and then you can go to your yard or go somewhere else, and then you can roll it out, and then you can just like plant it there. The problem was like it dries out because there's so little dirt, and the roots of the grass aren't actually rooting into the dirt, and it gets really dry and arid during the summer. And excuse me, watering it isn't enough. I've gotta be honest. If you got dry dirt, then you actually have to have bugs and maggots and worms and mealworms and stuff like going in there and like kind of putting extra nutrients in the soil from their consuming whatever they're consuming. They gotta go back in the soil, and then when the soil gradient gets to be a certain percentage, a certain pH, that's when the plant roots gets deeper, and that's when you can kind of like, like you got the little nice little blend from the thing that you put out at the top, and then it just gets like it becomes part of the ground, and then you don't have to worry about purchasing new rolls of grass over and over again. But they didn't have that. That's why that was happening, because they didn't have any worms or mealworms or dirt like that was capable of. Dirt gets like really expensive, especially for like really large acre. So because of it, like you have to put more dirt and worms and stuff in it. If you want to put worms in there, like you can get the fishing cannons worms from the fishing store, but I don't think those are the same type of worms that are going to do the job as if you get the dirt worms you get from a compost pile. And it's good for the environment because it's a natural way to get more nutrients into the soil, and the degradation of the food particles is actually extra nutrients for the dirt too. So it gets added onto the dirt, so it's probably better that way. Also, there's a garden center. There's greenhouses and gardens right across the street from the station at a park. It's a public or a community garden. So if they ever need a compost pile, they can just get it from here and put it over there. And also, I might actually need the compost pile, but I don't have currently a property, but I want to like plant stuff. If I like And compost piles take a while to develop, so that you can't just expect it to be there in like 6 months. It's like something that you build over like a period of time, and then like after a while it's a compost pile, and then it's really nice if it's been there for a while. You can get like nice worms and dirts and mealworms and stuff from it. Some people just feed their lizards and stuff and birds like with that kind of stuff. But you should get separate mealworms from the pet store. I think there are different species, and they feed it a special, specific nutrients, so it's better for your pets to digest than if you were just to grow it on your own. Like, you can grow it on your own, but you're gonna have to grow it the way that they grow it. But I guess it's better than not feeding your lizard or something. Something like that. I don't fucking know. I don't actually have lizards currently. But yeah, that's what they were assuming. They thought I was running a scam, and they thought I was involved with David, the guy from Hungary, who was like trying to run an immigration scam or whatever. And I was like, I don't know what to do. They didn't believe me. A lot of the people in the city didn't even believe me. They thought that I was lying or that I was discriminating against him because he's a refugee. And that's what it seemed like until they saw what he was doing when I stopped talking to him. And like, yeah, he's gonna start asking people for money. He might even break it. I think he has broken into a few cars and a few apartments. And I'm like, yeah, I was trying to prevent that from happening because he saw me. He thought that it's a good idea to do that to me. And he was just gonna start harassing everybody in the neighborhood until like I got out of there. And like they started blaming me for it because he was gonna tell everyone that I owe him money or something, and they wouldn't really know that much. Since we're both not actually born from the country. Right? So I was like, yeah, and a lot of them, especially white people, thought that I was being racist because they're like, it's probably because he's not like from your country, and I'm like, that's what you're like. I'm not like that. And then they were also thinking that like I was the one who intentionally got him to not. I'm like, no, I actually met him when his refugee status was already expired. That was actually the shelter worker's job to do that thing. It wasn't me. And they didn't believe me until they actually saw what they were like. And then I was like, I get that you might need evidence for that kind of stuff, but like at the same time, like it was kind of obvious. Like some people knew that he was a type of guy, but um the people that did know, they assumed that like I did or said something to offend him or like made fun of him for his status or something. And I lied and said that I would help him, but he didn't know I was lying. But I'm like, I never said that ever. But that's what they were assuming because they're like, it just makes more sense if that was happening, and if that wasn't happening, that means like there's something wrong with going on and stuff. And I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Something weird going on. I don't know who's involved exactly, and I don't know why this is happening, but it's been going for a while. I just figured out about like I just realized what was going on about it just a little bit of a little while ago, not very recently, and I didn't actually know how bad it got. Like I said, it very recently. I don't know if I should go there and take a shower or something. Some people in the Scarborough area told me not to tent there. Like, don't put up tents and don't sleep on the streets of Scarborough. It gets really bad. And I was like, who do you me? And they're like, it gets really bad. It's better if you can stay somewhere where it's like, even if you're being like yelled at and insulted and harassed by people, they won't actually like, come and damage your stuff or like wake you up in the middle of the night to surprise you so they can rob you or something like that. Like, okay, I get it. But yeah, Um, so that's what that was, and that's why they thought that I was involved or something. And they're like, they thought that I was gonna like, I was just using him like to make fun of him. I was just abusing him, and that was making him look like I was normal. And they're like, there are people who do that, and they kind of look like you're attractive at this level because they're from a poor income background. And I'm like, I guess, but like at the same time, it's kind of obvious there's something wrong with that guy. And they're like, yeah, it was, but then it's also possible that you knew that and you were taking advantage of that and you thought the other people would say that. And even if that was true, even if there was no evidence for it, like that's what you were gonna say. And I was like, I wouldn't do that because even if I did, like people would be able to tell. And then that's what they were assuming. They're like, yeah, sooner or later we'd be able to tell. And then I'm like, that's not what's going on. It was just what I told them, and they're like didn't believe me because they're like they assumed that like I was this type of person already. Like in their heads, I was already some type of person, and then they just realized that they made a mistake in their judgment, which is something a lot of people have a hard time admitting. But yeah, I was like, what is that? I have no idea what's going on. Like, I don't know why they thought that, but that's what a lot of people thought. They're like, yeah, you probably knew he was a refugee and like was targeting him and stuff. It sounds like a trashy romance novel, honestly. Literally, and also I'd never even met him until like it's a year after his status expired. So I was like, I don't know why they were blaming me. I guess they were just freaking out and panicking, and they were hoping that that was the case because that would make things so much easier, and that would mean that everything is working as it should be. Not that there's any problems with the government, and there's some corruption going on, and some people aren't doing their jobs, and there's like, all this panic, red alert, yeah. Like there's even a break, that kind of stuff. But yeah, yeah, that's that's what they were saying, and I didn't know that that's what they thought because to me it didn't make sense because I wasn't the type of person they thought I was, and I'm like, wow, I just think that, and they're like, because of these reasons, there are people that are like you that are like that, but I'm like, you never met me and I don't know you, so you can't say that about me because I never actually we've never met, we don't actually know each other. There's a lot of assumptions that you're making, and it's very superficial. But they're like, even with that, like the fact that you're homeless, which is something that a lot of people make assumptions on, and like, you know what, I gotta be honest, I think I agree with most of their assumptions, is that the person did something to deserve being homeless. It's not because of any other reason than like some people don't even deserve to be fed or housed, but they're being fed and housed anyway. And it's for no other reason than like that person is such a horrible person or did so many mistakes that it's just people can put up with it anymore. And I'm like, I get that, and I've met a lot of homeless people who are like that, and I get that a lot of them, they if they were in a very wealthy income background, then they'd be the same type of person. They wouldn't really have a job, but they'd be living off of their inheritance money or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, I get that, but like at the same time, like you don't actually know me, and I'm pretty sure nothing really set you off. And then they're like, there are people that are like that. You don't actually know them, and nothing ever really sets you off, and it's not even obvious. And they do some really weird shit. And I'm like, really? Like, are you sure you're not misreading it, or you just didn't realize it until later? And they're like, no, they're completely normal. There's really nothing, and you can't even feel it. And they're like, you end up becoming friends with them, which is what I was talking about earlier, where people make a lot of effort to do that, and then they get to be friends with somebody and take advantage of that friends that way. And I'm like, I thought that was obvious. And they're like, not always if that person's genuinely liking you and like their intentions aren't to hurt you. But they end up doing that anyway, and it ends up hurting you, even though that wasn't like they weren't planning on it. That kind of thing. And I was like, that's pretty rough. And they're like, yeah. And that's kind of, they get jaded, their judgment gets clouded, they know this, they make a lot of discriminatory remarks which actually affect their social life. Some people actually get like some sort of mental health problems from that kind of stuff, and it just kind of like worsens their state and it just makes everything worse, you know. And I was like, oh, that sucks. And they're like, yeah, this is kind of why they don't even want to like help anyone out after, because of what they're still kind of depressed about it. And if it's like that traumatizing and that shocking, then yeah, it's gonna take a while for them to get better after. But I was like, it's just really frustrating for me because like I'm just like, wow, I have to prove myself every single time just so like you don't feel uncomfortable and you don't like. I guess a lot of them do suffer from phobias, so I guess like can't really say anything if they have a mental health issue, but like it's like, oh my god, I shouldn't have to go through all this, which is a lot of people have saying like this is what most people go through in their 40s. Like in the 40s they have like the finances are stable and they have a house and all that kind of stuff, everything is pretty much stable, but they have like they're starting to encounter actual social problems. So people in their 40s and their 50s, they start going through this kind of stuff, and by the time that they're 60s and 70s, they actually are very adept in like adjusting themselves accordingly, and they can retire in peace or whatever. And I'm like, so why am I going through it so early? And they're like, they have no idea, but apparently this is what I'm going through as a 27-year-old woman, what people encounter when they're in their 40s. And I'm like, I think it could have waited until I was in my 40s. Like, I don't think I had to go through it now. I'm a little concerned. I don't want to go outside because like there's been some weird people following me, and I think some of them are like, you know, visa claimants or like refugee status people, and some people are like, some of them are actively trying to instigate something. So like, I'm actively in eye of the officers so that they know that I'm not actually doing anything. In the case that they're trying to implicate me in some crime, some people have done that previously too, and I'm like, ugh. It's really annoying, and I'm like getting really bad breakouts, like pimples everywhere. Oh, and I can't even eat properly. I'm stressed out, and I'm worried about Preston, and yeah. Now I gotta wait until Animal Services emails me, and they're like, "Oh, hey, you can pick up your dog now," and I'm like, yeah. What I heard from the people on the phone, they're telling me like they're gonna try to wait until it's a safe-ish time for you to go, so you can pick up the animals without some people following you from that location, or like you encountering some weirdo who might actually try to hurt you. And I'm like, and a lot of people thought that I was just gonna show up there and camp there and just like wait until they give me their dog and like just damage all their properties. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that. I've never done that in my life, and I know a lot of people are telling me to do that. I can read it from their body language and what they're trying to tell me. But I'm like, because a lot of them would be doing that themselves if they're in that situation, and a lot of them they just want me to do something like that so people know that I'm a very dangerous and volatile person. But I have self-control, and even though sometimes I do want to do those things, I don't, because I just don't think it's like it's not gonna resolve things faster, right? Like I'm not gonna get my dog any faster even if I showed up there, and I'm not gonna get my stolen belongings returned to me faster even if I start damaging public property. Like those things aren't gonna, it's gonna actually cause them to delay their time in doing those things, right? Like if I start damaging public property because people kept on stealing, no one's doing anything about it, now they have another damage in the property for them to do, like take care of prior to even getting there, because it might be a small thing, but it's like a very priority because that could cause a lot of problems. So now it's like, oh, so now that's on the priority list instead of my thing, which isn't technically a priority list because I'm not dying. Literally, if I was dying, I'd be in the hospital, right? So now that's no longer on the priority list, and there's like my stuff that I need got pushed down. And now all these stuff is happening, and they gotta go through all that, and then they can get to my stuff, right? And I'm like, ah, that is very annoying. So why that would just frustrate me and make my situation worse, which is why I'm not doing that, even though sometimes I do want to. Yeah, but I can see other people have done that, and I just don't think that's helpful. And what else that I've noticed is that um other than that, there's been um some people that other people can't control because they haven't done anything yet, and I know what that type of person that they're talking about. um like criminals who do certain kind of type of criminal activity, they actually can't arrest them or say anything to them because they haven't done anything, they haven't seen the person do anything, and the person actually not really doing anything even though they're kind of doing something, that kind of stuff. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. I know a lot of people are, and a lot of criminals do that kind of stuff, but not everybody who does that kind of stuff is a criminal. And also, some of them aren't doing, but also there's a lot of weird people out there. And even if I'm not gonna die, me having to spend a week in the hospital is not something that I'm trying to do. Like, I'm trying to prevent that from happening. Like, I don't want to get robbed at gunpoint or knife point. I don't want some stranger who were, I think that's why they have all these like mental health beds available in the crisis beds, where they're like, if you're being stalked by a mentally ill person, or like your family members are going through mental health crisis and you just need some time away and it's affecting your health, then you can use these centers. Or you are actively doing that and you want to get away from that environment for a bit so that you can rest and then you get back in there. So that's kind of, and there's 24-hour cameras, supervision. There's always somebody on staff to look after stuff and all that kind of stuff. So that's what that was. Yeah, but I just don't know what else to do about that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to like even do anything. I didn't know so many people were criminals here, and they're like telling me most of them actually end up just getting deported, because you'd be surprised how many of them don't even have a citizenship for doing this. I guess it's because it's so lax here, and like nobody's really like so like jumping on you, and there's less pressure, plus there's less people here, right? That like people think that it's okay, or like they're getting away with it, and like no one's really like doing anything about it, and I'm like, that's not what that is. Right? It's like, okay, like I get that, like it's just, and people are very inclusive here, like no one's really trying to ostracize anyone, and even if they don't like you, like you still find a way to go about meeting new people and socializing, right? Like no one's gonna completely ignore you. They're not even, like, even if they lie to you and they just give you a dirty look, that's still not ignoring you. They know that you're there and that you exist. It's not ignoring somebody. But I know some places they do that, and that's probably why they're like, oh, it's so nice here, like everyone's like so happy and friendly and welcoming, and like no one's really like at my throat, and like no one even cares about my legal status. And then they get like really like they get relaxed, and it just kind of like puts them into a false sense of security. Because like I guess in their country, like people actually like hound them and like talk to them, and their neighbors know about their situation. They're like, why aren't you doing anything about it? Blah, blah, blah. But they don't actually do that here, which is kind of it's a double-edged sword, I think, where it's like, okay, well now it's completely up to you. Like you have to make sure that you're doing this on your own, and you're going out of your way, and you're taking the initiative to make sure that your situation's better. Like you can't rely on other people to remind you. You can't rely on other people to do the work for you. Like you can do that on your own, and you should be, and no one's really gonna like hound you for it. Which is great, but at the same time, the thing that sucks is, oh, I didn't know that guy was a veterinarian. It's so weird. Okay, but anyway, the point is, people get really relaxed here because they're so used to people talking to them, reminding them, getting all these notifications from other people, from their body language, and like other immigration officers, and getting calls and texts all the time, and neighbors always like implying something or whatever. But it's not really like that here. Like this is very like, if you didn't even know, like your time would pass by, and all of a sudden you're just like, oh my god. And plus, like, it gets so, the reason why it takes so long for anything to happen is because it has to go through the court system, the criminal justice system, or whatever other system, like family courts or civil courts or whatever, and they need to get the final judgment after assessing all the evidence. Even if there's new evidence popping up, then that gets added to the court, which gets case to be solved longer. So again, it's kind of like, it takes a while for anything to actually happen. Only because I don't know if it's the same in other countries. Some people might actually jump the gun a little bit and like they know that's gonna happen and they know that what that person's gonna do, so they might just like start harassing that person or whatever, or like doing some weird stuff. And then that's kind of, yeah, it's kind of how like they like it here better because they're not allowed to do that because people get fired and they get to face like, a lot of consequences if they do that at work. So they don't do that, right? Like they know that they're like, oh, this is like da 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 da. Like if I did that, I wouldn't have a job anymore. So I kind of need my job. I'm not gonna do that. That kind of stuff. What else? It's been kind of a long day. I'm not gonna lie. Currently, it's 3:04, and I think, yeah. Oh my god. It's kind of odd that this all happened, and it was during Preston's appointed vet appointment time. I was gonna take him to the vet a slightly later. Like I'm supposed to take him when he's 6 months old and once when he's 12 months. I took a little longer for that to happen just because like he just got so shocked from seeing the vet the first time. I mean, the first vet he saw kind of like he was kind of like out of it, and then the second time he got he wasn't doing very well. I guess no dog likes going to vet. He never really was like I've never seen any dog respond that way after going to see the vet and getting shots. Apparently it hurts the dogs when they get shots and stuff, and I'm like, ugh. But yeah, I guess they ran a few blood tests on him too, and he didn't like that. So that's what happened. And I was supposed to take him at 6 months, but I was gonna wait until like around 9 months. I was aiming for 9 months instead of 6 because it's still okay since he's a large breed, and I don't expect him to be fully grown until like probably 14 to 15 months. So I was gonna wait, and then at 12 months, at 1 year age, I would take him to this vet, and I was kind of expecting him to have some sort of problems during the between 1 and 2 years of age. So I was gonna plan for another vet appointment between that time, but that didn't end up happening, and he actually ended up seeing a vet at 7, 6, 7, 7, 7, 8, a little earlier than I intended. But I guess it's still better than not seeing a vet. Um, Animal Services and Toronto Humane Society do offer veterinary services. So like if I ever need to get a shot for Preston, or like if I need to get a rabies shot or some sort of like yearly vaccinations and get like licensing and stuff for my pet and like stuff like that. If there's an emergency, I'm pretty sure I'll get taken to Animal Services unless I have an animal like there are 24-hour vets here, so I can take him to one of those too if I knew the vet there or if I chose to take him there. It's gonna be more expensive than going to Animal Services, but that's like I actually don't know if I don't know. Maybe I might actually, because they might actually have like um they might have more veterinary materials in stock than Animal Services. I think it's just for very basic stuff, and they might have to order it on an as needed basis, or like if they've encountered these many problems in the year and they don't want to go order stuff and have it be expired and thrown out. So that's what they do. So with that, like I think that's that's why I would have taken, like, if it was like an invasive surgery and he was a certain type of dog that didn't respond well to medication and he needs to substitute for that, then yeah, that private vet would have access to that because they would be in stock. But Animal Services, they'd only provide stuff for very general, very basic animals, and it wouldn't really be as thorough or comprehensive. Like they would have as many things for the surgery as the private vet, but again, it costs like twice to 3 times the amount. I took my cat to the. I signed up for because it was in a different township, so I had to sign up for like I had to be on a waiting list for spay neuter services, and I didn't have a credit card at the time, so it just ended up going to the person after me. But I ended up taking him to a very local vet nearby, and he was fine. Everything was fine. Surgery was a great success, and he wasn't experiencing any problems after that. But He was expensive, I gotta be honest. But the only reason I didn't take him to the animal services location was only because I told I didn't have an access to a credit card, so I couldn't pay with my credit card, and they don't accept Interact Online. So I was asking somebody else if I can use their credit card. I'll give them cash on hand, but like if the cash that I give them, they can use your credit card, but I'll give them cash for it. So that's what I was asking her to do. She didn't do that, and she just didn't want to, and I didn't want to. Like again, this is the foster mom I'm talking about. So I didn't want to like get her to be physically and mentally upset. She would be, even though there's no reason for it, which is why she's mentally ill. Um, Over something so minor, if I can take him to a different vet, and they told me that they do provide payment options, so I paid half of it, and the other half when they went to pick him up, they paid the other portion of it, which is great. But like, I don't really trust them, which is why I didn't really want to leave him there. Like, he was fine with me, and everything was going well, and he was doing somewhat okay. But the better he was starting to do, and the more that he got old, the older he got, and the more accustomed to me and his situation he got, the more anxious they became. Which is a little odd. I know this is typically seen with criminals and people with antisocial personality disorders. They tend to like abuse and torture animals um, since like their childhood, which is a problem, just a signifier. I had never done that, and I didn't think they were doing that, but I can see that that's what they were feeling. Like they wanted to torture and abuse the animal, and the only reason they weren't doing so was because they paid for it. So that's kind of how I. It's kind of a little bit of a trick, kind of, but not really. Like I paid for I made them pay the rest of the portion because I wanted them to know that they're taking care of the vet and not the vet, the animal from the vet when they pick it up. So they know who the vet is and they know who's working there and they know who the money's going to, and also they know where the cat went. And since they paid money for it, they're less likely to like kind of cut out on their investment, right? Because it's now like I care about this animal because I did this and I did this for it, and I went out of my way. I didn't have to. It was optional, but I wanted to, and somebody asked me to do it, so it's fine. So that's what I did, and it did help them for a bit, but it didn't stop them from still feeling that, which was the problem. Like I doesn't get rid of that kind of emotion and those responses and those thoughts, but at least for a little bit it helped, which was great because by the time that he was old enough, like he wouldn't have been at risk for some sort of psychological damage or like serious physical harm. So that's why, like, and at the same time, like, cats are better in a stable house environment more so than on the street. There's a lot of stray cats, they're fine with that being on the street, but they like stability more so than dogs. Dogs are more accustomed to their job, so at least as long as their job is stable, they're fine. With cats, their their day-to-day tasks has to be stable, and the people that they meet has to be stable. So like even if it's a stray cat, they'll only go across the same road and they'll only be seen at the same locations. Like they won't go outside of the area that they always go to. With dogs they might, but it's for something else. Because they're doing something, right? They're working or whatever, and then that's what they're doing. But it might be at different locations. But not with cats. But as long as they knew that they're paying for it and I'm not forcing them, and it's something that they're trying to help out with, right? And it's part of the family now because now it's a household member, and it's hard for them to understand this. And apparently, this is what a lot of people in poor areas and people from poor backgrounds are like this. Apparently, I didn't know this. I just knew what they were like. I didn't know everybody in that situation was like that. But that's what they said, like because they're from a poor area, because they did that, it makes it easier for them to understand this is a part of my household, and it gets easier for them to accept that. So even if they're feeling upset about something, they're gonna find another way to resolve that instead of taking it out on something that's not part of their household or not part of like the schematic of me and my area, that kind of stuff. But that's for mentally ill people. So people who with serious disorders or behavioral issues or anything like that, or like sociological standpoint, people who are suffering from chronic poverty. So that kind of stuff. So that's kind of, yeah. So it's like I did feel bad. I was what I was telling the vet for leaving him at the vet, and because he didn't like going to the vet, and also the fact that I was mentioning to leaving him in the town because I was always there, even though it was periodically. But I had to leave him there for a little bit, just in long enough for them to know that it's my cat and that they're part of the household and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what I was trying to get him to understand, that these people are okay and you don't have to scratch them. They're not going to really hurt you that much, and they're not doing it to hurt you, they're just angry, but that's how they're doing it. And apparently it helped with a lot of their like emotional stressors, because petting the cat, playing with the cat, it distracts them from whatever's bothering them. It might be nothing benign thing, like, oh, they saw somebody who was doing something they didn't like that day, and they just got so frustrated about that, and they just kind of play with the cat and pet with the cat. It's kind of like a therapy animal. A lot of people do therapy for like animal therapy stuff, so that's kind of also helping with that. And they were only okay with cats there because like they didn't, this is what I was expecting, which is that when they figured out the breed of him, I thought that they were going to use him to make more kins and sell money from him, because it's actually it's a fancier breed. So it's a fancy cat, and it's like not like a fancy cat, like not, it's not like a regular like on the street mongrel cat. It's actually bred cat from a cat breeder. And yes, there's a lot of cat breeders out there. um I was trying to get them to stop from doing that. It didn't look like anything else of a regular cat until you look a little closely, and then you actually examine his behavior, and then you realize it's a hybrid. It's like a designer mix, like a golden doodle. And then I tried to like prevent them from using him for selling him his kittens for money, which is actually animal abuse, right? So I ended up just neutering him, and I had expected that they were gonna try to do that, which what they did figure out what the breed was later on. So I was like, okay, I'm glad I already did that, and they already know that's not okay. And that's why I did that. It's all I wanted to do. And that's why. But a lot of the times, I mean, they started abusing him, and it wasn't because they hated the cat. It was generally because they just didn't like their situation, and they didn't like being told what they're doing isn't okay, and they didn't like the fact that basically I wasn't really the reason for their problems, which is what they're starting to learn. Like that would have been happening regardless. Like them being upset about their life situation, who they have become over a period of time, would happen regardless of whether I had a cat or not, or how well I was doing. Right? So like even if I stayed at home all day and did absolutely nothing, right? Sooner or later all these charges would add up, and they would start understanding what they've done, and they can see from their life what they've accumulated, and they were upset about that, right? So that was why they were responding that way to me, and that wasn't really anything to do with me at all. Like I had nothing to do with that, but that would have happened regardless of whether or not the cat was there. And unfortunately, cat and myself took most of the brunt of their abuse. And I guess they just, I don't know, that's kind of I think also the vet was expecting, from the way the cat was behaving, like he was pissing in territories to like kind of notify that they're unhappy and they just don't want to pee and poo in the litter box. He actually, like, the only time he was doing that was when I was ignoring him, when he was attention seeking, or when he wanted to play when I was already busy doing something. So he would tell me by pooping just slightly or just right over the litter box. But that was it. Other than that, he started doing that behavior when I was more and more I was out of the house, and the more aggressive they behaved towards me, because I think that he saw what they were doing and he wasn't happy about that. So that kind of behavior that vet was mentioning to me only occurred after all that kind of stuff happened, and when he said that, I was kind of concerned that they might start abusing the cat prior to that happening. So that's kind of why I kind of left him there and got them to see, because he mentioned I was gonna pick it up on my own with them, but then he mentioned that, and I wanted him to see who was also living with him, not just myself. It's not just because there's other people in the house, not just me. Even if I'm doing everything right, there's other people who are doing something that I don't have control over. So that's kind of why I was like, um, that's kind of why I was like, you know, trying to like get them kind of acquainted. Like they don't have to be. They'll get super personal with that guy, but I just didn't want them to get so personal. Or even with the vet techs, like they'll randomly just show up to their vet tech stuff and start asking about cat stuff and stuff just to waste their time and just to, like see them and then leave. And I didn't want them to show up out of the blue, and I kind of wanted them to like kind of see them and then like kind of get to know them and say that they kind of lived there before that kind of stuff happened. Which was, I don't know if they actually did that. I think one of them did. I don't know if all of them. Oh, I think they're trying to tell me all three of them did that, but I was like, yeah, I don't really know. Anyway, I got the cat for myself, and I got all my cats for myself. But the reason why I don't like cats, apparently they're like 20-year-olds, like people in their 20s, where they were like, um, yeah, they like you can listen to their advice, but it's gonna end badly for you because you actually cats like they don't really do things in consideration of other people, and also like most of it is based on what they want. Not that it didn't make sense, but it's mostly based on wants, not really needs. So I was like, oh, yeah. Anyway, yeah, my cat misbehaves sometimes. It's kind of expected, but yeah, I wasn't very happy with that abuse stuff happening. I didn't know what to do about it. That's why I was staying away from it, and it came to a point where I couldn't do much. And I think I should like the problem is like right now I know I'm living on the streets, but like I feel like even if I move to a room or a neighborhood, like they're just gonna start calling the cops on me for no reason.
To stay at least 2 meters or 6 feet away from other
Which is why I'm trying to prevent. Actually, I'm glad my OW worker agrees with me on this, which is saying he's saying like I don't think it's a good idea for you to rent anywhere. It just currently the situation because there's not a lot of rental units that are great and legal and whatever.
for more information.
Yeah. So I'm glad he agreed with me on
Subway
that.
service on the portion of the
But
line
again, they're not really doing something right. Like I know that for a fact, and I'm not getting the full release of my funds. But I have a way to supplement that. So I am still actively looking for a job, and I'm hoping that after I start using the dog boarding services and everything in the area, I can start like looking for a job better that way, especially if the COVID ban gets lifted. Um, and I can start like doing stuff more so. I mean, at the end of the day, I can't really do much about the fact that I can't find a place to live. And I've seen the rental units that are okay to rent, and they're condominium, 3-bedroom condominium or 2-bedroom condominium units in a very nice secluded area, which costs around like $1,500 to $2,100 a month plus utilities and any maintenance fees that pops up because you have extra security there, and there's a gym and there's a pool and a sauna and all that kind of stuff that anyone who lives there can use. And I was like, yeah, I don't know if I want to like. What I was thinking is hopefully like I could find like a housemate or something, like find a friend, and then somebody actually had to tell me this. They're like, don't do that with a girl or a woman. It gets weird after a while, and are you really supposed to live with that person for that long? Like you don't really get it because you're 27, but when you get older, you'll finally start to realize why that kind of stuff gets kind of weird. But like it gets wrong sometimes. Like you start taking advantage of each other, and it's not okay for you to just live with another woman for such a long period of time, unless you're family. But even then, most families don't even like living with each other. Like I've noticed. Like to me, it feels like suffocating. Like it just be like, can't breathe, man. I just need my space. And like I don't know. But anyway, like I said, like it kind of like okay, so that's my current issue, my problem. Yeah, so I think they can afford to put me up at a hotel or a hostel for a bit, but I don't know if I'm supposed to report that. But yeah, currently that's my current situation, and I'm gonna have to find an employer willing enough to hire me in this situation. A lot of people have told me to leave the city, but my problem is I'm saying it doesn't matter what city I'm in, this kind of problem is gonna keep happening, and I'd rather stay in one location just for a little bit until most of the legal stuff is done and I have access to a passport before I can start doing anything else. Which is, yeah. But I guess like a lot of people eased off after me, after one of the neighbors came to talk to me and just asked me. and I just told him the truth, and he's like, oh, so he's, and I'm like, wouldn't you do that? Like, I don't know why you guys wouldn't have asked me. Like, I don't know why you went around it that way. And they're like, yeah, it's probably because they didn't know you very well, and they don't know anyone that you knew, or they didn't know any of your family members, so they were kind of hesitant. They didn't know how you take it. I'm like, I go on by the assumption everyone's normal. So if I needed to ask somebody something, I just go up to them and ask them. Even if they're offended, they're not going to do anything because that they know that it's just offensive. It's not something to hate them for, right? That's how I go about doing things. Yeah, but yeah. There's currently a whole government issue start in the city. The problem is I don't have enough money to leave. And maybe that's what the other one was trying to hint, is saying maybe you should, find a plane ticket and kind of get out of the city for a bit. You can come back here later. It's probably not the best place for you because just things are just, and plus it's summertime and it's a great time to stay outside and get adjusted. And then in the winter you can find somewhere else to like be near. And then after a while, like you can probably see like, like if the housing situation's improved or like anything else popped up with the housing stuff. So I'm like, okay, well that's great. But yeah, things could be better, but again, I have no control over that, so that's why I'm not sad. I feel like I can't really control all that kind of stuff. I mean, you know what? This is what I was assuming, and I guess I was wrong. Most people I saw who were very upset about something minor, I just assumed something else was going on in their life, and they just didn't want to talk about it. So like they were just getting upset with that little thing, just kind of like just let people know it's not a serious thing, and they're just upset. They're not really upset about anything. But turns out they were literally just upset about the thing, and I was like, well, so yeah. That's basically the gist of what I have learned and read from that. They're right. Like even if these things happen, I can't just pack up and move and leave just because like whatever. But I just said that's not the reason why. It's just because of the things that they said and did to me that was very very personal. And their intention was literally to hurt me, and this was outside of like their experience. They were just literally trying to kill me. I just don't think that's okay. And they're like, yeah, probably not. So apparently it goes either one of two ways. A person actually ends up staying here, or they just end up leaving. But people who end up staying here didn't have that stuff happen to them, or didn't have those things being said to them and about them. But that did happen to me, which is kind of a wild thing. But yeah. I guess a lot of people didn't really like the fact that I don't know if I should say in the province rather. I'm thinking about leaving the province just for a little bit, but I'm just like, yeah, but I don't have cards for another province. It's gonna take a while. And I don't know if I should say anything. But anyway, like some guy said that he's in trouble and like things aren't going well and like things are getting kind of worse, and I was like, I'm not sure where I should be in this situation. Maybe I can ask somebody for a little bit of assistance or something. As in like